gotta go out and before a care plan meeting, talk to the parents about what's changed. You know, the concerns, the most recent concerns, to make sure that they're highlighted with the care plan meeting. The strengths, any strengths or any changes happen at the care plan meeting, and then the strengthening culture is updated. It goes back to the family. The family has to sign off on it, supervisors sign off on it. So
I just want to ask a question.
It's a fluid document.
Do folks at the CSAs that are represented here feel that the Strengthening Culture Discovery documents that they're producing reflect the deepness, the complexities of culture, families
No.
that we're working with?
No.
The tool itself, maybe, like the stories that we heard earlier this morning, do you read a Strengthening Culture Discovery and feel like you're getting the same thing that you were getting from the self-disclosures this morning?
I think a lot
No.
of family partners have a real hard time with that culture.
Yes.
That they're still, especially new people coming in, they're still thinking we mean, are they African American, are they
Correct.
Hispanic? It's helping them understand that
Going deep.
it's much deeper. It's how do they live, what's important to them, you know, who do they spend time with?
Okay, great. That's a great segue. So this is Amy McCarthy. She's a senior ICC at the Home for Wanderers, and she would like to do a little activity with you all to maybe try to get at some of those deeper levels of culture.
Great. We at the home CSA have felt like the Strengthening Culture Discovery is something we present to the families almost as though it's going to be a gift for them. And we explain it to them in our intake kind of meeting. They get really excited to be like, oh, this is a document that like kind of, you know, tell more of my life story. I can bring it to the hospital. I can bring it to the doctors. The next set of providers that you people are going to refer me to, or what have you, are going to be able to get my story a little bit quicker. Then I'm not going to have to rehash out. And, oh, let me come in now. Make away from this crowd. And so we've kind of had conversations along the way about, you know, how do we actually make this like a document that how we sell the document, how are we going to make it that rich document that we kind of tell them that we're going to give them. And we kind of along the way learned that, you know, just kind of sitting down and having a conversation doesn't really stimulate that deep kind of discussion. Like we kind of talked about, it takes years for us to get to know like our closest friends and family on that kind of like deeper level. So how are we supposed to do that in 42 days with our, you know, before the CPT happens? And so I'm going to share a couple of examples of things that we've started doing, but I'm hoping that we can kind of all together come together and brainstorm some ideas that we can bring back to our own CSAs that are going to generate those deeper discussions that are going to help us understand the families that we work with a little bit differently. So one of the things that we've done, very simple activity, is I went onto this website. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the Foundation for a Better Life. They have like billboards like on the highway and stuff, and they basically just have like, you know, some type of inspirational story, and then there's a value that they have, and then it says pass it on. So they have a website that lists you know, probably like hundreds of different types of values that someone might have. So for example, we've written down on a set of cards, you know, some of these. So they're forgiveness, strength, education, character, sacrifice, so on and so forth. And so what we might do in an activity with a family, you could do this before CPT, you could do this when you kind of first go out to meet them, kind of get the whole family together. As you kind of sit down, it kind of almost feels like an icebreaker where, you know, the family picks up a couple cards that they think, you know, really rings true for them, and kind of tell me a story about why you feel like that's important to you as a caregiver, or that's why that's important to you as a family member. This family, another way we've used them is sitting down and having someone in a circle pick one that represents somebody else in the circle and tell us why they think that that is something that rings true for that person, and kind of being able to acknowledge that. And we found that it's worked really well to kind of just, because if you ask me what my values are, or the values that my family instilled in me growing up, I'd be like, and you know, like it's almost like your brain just like goes, it freezes. You're like, because it's like so overwhelmed to kind of try to figure that out in one question. And so this really prompts people to really think about their family stories and growing up and what was important, and it kind of just stimulates that brain kind of going. Another thing we've come up with is, has anyone ever seen those story cubes that exist? They're just dice with like little pictures on them. And so you might use those kind of to like, you know, you kind of shake them and everyone, you know, picks one up, and then they kind of start telling a story about that. Maybe it's creating a story about your family, or, you know, something again that reminds you of a time you were growing up. There's an app that they have on iPhones called the Social app. And so this one, you kind of want to be a little bit more, like, you want to make sure that you're kind of censoring, like, the questions that come up. But basically, like, you know, you enter how many players are involved and, like, everyone's name, and then it kind of generates, like, questions for you to get to know someone a little bit better. And so it's kind of, again, it doesn't feel like you're just sitting down and, like, and interviewing this family about themselves. And it kind of feels more natural and kind of flows a little bit more. So we want to kind of energize this group together to kind of come up with some brainstorming around not only how do you elicit and, you know, the information from the family, but also are there ways that this document can become more alive to a family. In our CSA, we've talked about, you know, could we make it, like, either the family shows us like a photo album and we get more information by going through family pictures with them, but also could we put family pictures into the Strengths, Needs, Culture Discovery document? Could we make a video about the family that kind of like showcases what their story is and becomes kind of more, again, that kind of like this is your story, and, you know, there should be some pride around the fact that, like, you have gotten this far and these are your family stories, and kind of like creating that for them. So I don't know, that's where we're at. So we want to kind of invite everyone to come along with that. So do we want to break into tables?
So Amy passed out the template for the Strengths, Needs, Culture Discovery that has the life domains on it, and each table could pick a life domain from that document and come up with a strategy for an activity and a strategy for a question that you might ask to elicit information for that domain. Does that make sense? So a question.
I do that question.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And if this was a CPTA, I'd give you 60 seconds to
How are
come
we
up with as
doing with
many
time?
answers as possible.